years ago. Like a lot of people, I started thinking that, hey, I thought I was just gonna hide when the bees would come to me, right? But I got a package, never went through any schooling, did some YouTube training, and then the following year I became a member of Forsyth and really enjoyed the journey that this club and some other clubs have taken me on as far as knowledge. So that being said, just a little bit about knowledge. It's not just Forsyth. There's all the great books and journals. I don't know how many of y'all have looked through the boxes there. Some of that is catalogs, and as our first speaker was talking about, the catalogs do have some great information in there as well. But even the older bee journals in there are great. I mean, some of that's from a couple years ago or the year before. It's great information. Make sure you grab those because there's some great articles. So please don't leave without grabbing those if you haven't already. So today I'm going to be talking about equipment. This is probably the first thing that y'all started looking at when you were interested in becoming beekeepers. Hey, what kind of hive I'm going to get. Get really excited when you open the hive up and the smell of the nice wood. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the smoker. Smoker is going to be your main tool when you go into the hive, minus your hive tool. We talked a little bit about pheromones. Your smoker is designed to slightly mask the pheromones. You're going to want to have a cool smoke. I know we talked about that in the first one. Once you get it started, which on that second day of beekeeping, bee school, the first thing that we're going to be dealing with before you go into the hives is everybody starting their smoker. So you'll have time, everybody's having struggles going, oh, it's not staying lit, and we're going to help you through that. And making sure that you don't have this big flame. Going back to PPE, from experience, I'm puffing, that flame's going, and then all of a sudden I don't have a veil anymore because it melted in it. So just be very careful. But you definitely want to use it sparingly. Oh, I don't know. Sorry. You definitely want to use it sparingly. No matter how nervous you are, you don't want to just, it's just going to make the bees even more mad. So you want to go in, when you first go, puff the entrance a little bit, and then you'll take off the top and give them a little blow on the top. And then just as you need it, just do it. If they're really calm, don't smoke them. I went in 2 weeks ago. My smoker burnt out twice before I even had to use it because the bees were just so calm that day. Other thing, we talk about winter maintenance, which is cleaning up your bee equipment, getting new bee equipment ready. One thing I didn't do this year, you might not be able to see it, I did not clean out my smoker. It is completely tar, pine tar. So I have to do that. It gets really gross from all the pine straw that you accumulate. Just that tar builds up, and it can end up blocking the front end. So something to keep an eye on. But you'll see some really pretty smokers. They don't stay pretty for long. They're metal, and between all the tar and the propolis that you're touching from your gloves, it will get pretty nasty pretty quick. Like I said, we will be practicing this in April. We'll come out with a bunch of pine straw. You can bring your own fuel as well. There's lots of different fuel that you can use. Chips of corn cobs, the dried corn cobs. Rodent bedding that you can get from Walmart or the pet store, like cedar chips and pine chips. They burn really fast though, so it's a good starter, but it's cheap. Sawdust, sawdust pellets, and some people even use manure. I didn't think about that, but going back to one of the books that we suggest for you to read, The First Lessons of Beekeeping, it is in there as a suggestion. It burns really quick, really quick. So once again, you will get frustrated. It took me a couple years before I really understood how to get the smoker to work.
and just getting it lit from the bottom is the biggest thing, and making sure you pack it really good without putting out when you putting it out, you'll figure it out. But some people it takes years, some people never get it. I have a neighbor that I mentor sometimes, well not mentor, help her out, and she still has problems with it. But something that you just definitely want to practice on and get some good tips on your next class in April. All right, so the next tool, the first tool is your smoker. The next tool you have to have to go into your hive. It's going to be your hive tools. A couple different types. This is a traditional hive tool right here. You have a pry bar, so you can almost use that for prying. And then it almost looks like a scraper bar right here. You can use that for prying as well. Also scraping and other tools. This is the one that I use most of the time, and it still has that scraper / pry right there. And then it has your J hook, which can assist you with lifting up your frames. You can put it right underneath. Use this to sort of separate the propolis and lift that up. There is a third one that's sort of a hybrid between all of these. It's called a multifunctional tool. It's going to look like this, and then it's going to have your J hook onto the side. I don't have any of those. Some people really like them, but I've heard they're a little bit awkward. So those are your hive tools. You will, in this bucket, I have I think 7 or 8 of them, because they will fall down in the ground and you won't see them, or they'll be in your hand and you forget that it's in one hand and you're looking for the other one, or you have 2 in your back pocket, you forget they're the back pocket. So it's always good to have extra, because you're so focused on the bees, you forget about where you put the hive tool, or like I said, it'll fall down in the ground. So you need to make sure it's right. What's that?
Sometimes you would just leave it in the last hive.
Yep, you leave it in the hive. And so a good thing, so you'll see like this one, this is just an unpainted one. Try to find them with some paint, or if they don't have paint, get the brightest spray paint you can. Get like bright pink or whatever. It'll stand out when you have it, or when it drops on the ground. So I think I touched on all of that. The hive tool isn't just the things that you're going to use the hive tool for is first getting off the boxes, prying the boxes apart. They are going to glue those down with the propolis. Some people have more issues than others. Some hives have more. My bees, they glue everything. It can be 2 days and they have everything glued down. And it gets even worse once you get into the hive. So you can get those pulled apart, the box pulled apart, then you have to deal with the frames. And I have to break each frame apart before I can even get that pulled up. So your hive tool, you're going to have that with you for the entire inspection that you have there. And make sure you have multiple of them. Here's your traditional and your J-hook, like I just showed you. All right, something simple, hive stands. My hive stand is 4 cinder blocks and 2 4x4s. Something simple like that. This person used 4x4s and 2x4s to put this together and make it almost the exact size of their hive. If you look at the top right, that actually is a hive stand. That hive stand is one that you could put that on another stand, but if you want to have your hives more on the ground, this will lift them up from the ground, and it'll also have that landing board that will go up to the entry. So the benefits of each one of these, if you have a higher hive stand, you're not bending as much. And the only thing with that is, as the season gets further and further along, and you're adding super after super, You can have that really tall if it's already a few feet off the ground, which potentially means that you're on a ladder dealing with bees. So always think about that on how high your hive stand is going to be. So like with the cinder block example I gave you that I have the holes in the cinder block, and one time I put it on top of the cinder block, just that extra 4 or 6 inches made a huge difference. So I shrunk that, I moved them down further because I did not want them well above my head in the summertime. So for your bottom boards, basically there's 2 different types. There's a closed bottom board, as you can see with that 10 frame hive right there, that is a closed bottom board. And the more popular ones now are your screen bottom boards. Whether it be the closed or the screen, you're gonna have 3 edges, 2 edges on the side, an edge on the back, and then you're gonna have your entryway, which is gonna be just hollow space for them to go in beneath the hive body. The benefits of your screen bottom board, first of all, there's more ventilation. So you're gonna have the circulation of the air going, you're gonna have fresh air coming in from the bottom. So especially during the summertime, that can help out a lot with that. Also, there is a lot of evidence that it does reduce the mite load on the hive as well. Whereas the mites will fall through the screen, go to the bottom, and since there's no bees for them to hop on, it will reduce the amount of mites that are actually getting into the larva. So right now, out of my 6 hives, 5 of them have the screen bottom board. I've thought about making the 6th one a screen bottom board, but I like having something that's different so I can compare what's going on with them. That hive did really well the first couple years, but it has not been one of the strongest hives since I started using the screen bottom board. So I do believe in the screen bottom boards. During the winter, you can, or during the winter and when you're treating for Varroa, whether with your OA, you have a slide that you put in there. It's just corrugated board. And as those get dirty, you might have to throw them away. Election signs work great for those. They're made out of the same thing. You just cut them to fit and slide them right in. But people will also put those on during the winter time when it gets cold. There are some beekeepers that never put in those during the winter. They say it actually does better, even when it's really cold, in Georgia at least. And this isn't for your extreme places up north. I took mine out when we started getting into the 40s, and it's fine. I did put them in this week for just in case, because I had so much new brood that I wanted to protect the brood a little bit, but I'll probably take it out again next week. So those are the 2 choices. I'd say the benefit of the closed bottom board would be more winter protection, and that it's an easier one to put together as well. Oh, it also could probably reduce, it does have reduced the amount of predators that might be interested in your hive, just because it is closed up more and the scent's not coming out as much. So it can tend to have less predators from usually things like your hornets. So this is your brood chamber. I know there was a couple questions about that in the past couple presenters. So typically your brood chamber is going to be your 9 5/8 deep super that you see right there at the front. I know Rodney, some of y'all have been at Rodney's table. He sort of showed you what that looks like out there. Some people will only have 1 brood chamber, and then some people will have 2. Some people won't use the deeps. I don't see it that often where somebody has no deeps, but it is popular for people that don't want to lift something really heavy. So they'll use the 6 5/8 super for that, which will be your medium, just for the weight purpose alone. You have 10 frame hives and 8 frame hives. That's just another preference. If you don't want to be digging through 10 frames at a time and reduce it by 20%, that would be the reason to go to an 8 frame hive. I prefer the 10 frame hives. They're more common. If I'm getting equipment from somebody else, it's easier to find people that have 10 frame hive equipment. But whether you have a 10 frame or 8 frame, it's still easier to try to have your apiary as similar as possible. So say you start with 8 frames, you're good with 8 frames, it's easier to have multiple 8 frames than going, oh, I'm gonna have 2 8 frames and a 10 frame, because you can't use the boxes interchangeably between the two of them. So just something to think about with that. Somebody that I help out with down the street from me, she had that problem and she ended up getting rid of her 8 frames just because it was so hard when she was dealing with things throughout the year to interchange. All right, so this is what a hive looks like. Like I said, Rodney has the whole setup out there with that camouflage hive that he has. I put some brochures, some pamphlets up there right at the beginning of the presentation that you can grab that sort of goes over everything with this. So you have your frames and foundation. Your frames and foundation. So different size frames for different size boxes, obviously. But I have put medium frames in a deep box before, just as an emergency. The bees will do what the bees do, and they will make some ugly comb right below, usually drone comb, to make it the exact same length as the ones beside it. And sometimes it'll connect, and when I pull it out, you just have drone larvae going everywhere. It's pretty gross. So the different types of foundation that you have your plastic, which is the most common now. They come in different colors, yellow, black. Doesn't matter what color, the bees don't care. It's dark in there. They don't know what color these are. This is for us. For my hives, I use the yellow for all my supers, my honey supers, and then black I use for my brood box. The idea behind using black is the eggs are white, so looking down the black with the white on top, it's easier to find the eggs. Other types of foundation, you have your wax foundation. So this is a thin layer of wax. This one actually has wires for support. This will help, this actually encourages the bees to grow, to build out the wax foundation a lot faster and cleaner. It's very delicate, so if you use this for a honey super frame, honey frame, when you're spinning it, it could break into pieces while you're spinning it. There's also one of these wax foundations that you can get without the metal. You can use it for the same reason, but what most people use that for is for cut comb. So you don't have the metal in there, and you can actually cut the comb all the way through. One other option, just putting in a blank frame. You would want everything else built, all the other frames built out before you do that, or else it'll get really wonky. But they theoretically will build out this whole thing with wax, especially during the early springtime. I haven't put one in myself, completely blank, but what I have done is taken just as a test, about 1 inch of wax, put it at the top, and they built that thing out really fast. So we already talked about the sizes, just making sure that you order it. It is easy if you're looking at a catalog to say, oh, I'm ordering this size frame. And then you get them in going, oh, because you're talking about 1 inch difference sometimes, 2 inches difference, and you don't think about that when you're ordering it. So because there's 3 to 4 size boxes, you have your think it'll be here a little bit later. Oh, actually, he'll talk about that in the next one too. But there are 3 size boxes. You have your deeps, your mediums, your shallows, and then you also have one that's a little bit smaller than that is specifically made for cut cone that has perfect sizes that you can cut to put in the designated containers. Frame spacers. So I haven't used frame spacers before, but as you can see, it's a little metal piece that will go on each side of the box, and it will evenly space each frame. Now, for example, if you have a 10-frame hive, most of these frame spacers will reduce it to 9 or 8 frames, because it's actually allowing for a little bit more space between the frames. The reason it says don't use until you have drawn wax is because if you're spacing them out pretty more than usual, they will build some out quite a bit, and the other ones they won't be able to build out, or they'll start sticking them together. So you do want to have, ideally you want to have some drawn wax before you start using these. What these could be useful for is easier to get them out of the hive because they are spaced out a little bit more. Also, for honey production too, you will have more honey per frame if they're able to build the wax out further. So queen excluders, you have 3 different types. I've actually never seen a wood one before, but they have metal and plastic. The one we have outside, out there is metal. I have so many plastic ones at home just that came with hives, so that's all I use. You have to be careful when you get these off. You really want to scrape the propolis off underneath as much as possible, because if you rip that thing off, those bees are going to be just catapulted, and that's going to piss them off. And if the queen is underneath, she's probably going to go with them. So just be very careful when you're pulling that up, not to just pull it up really fast. Something that Rodney and I were talking about too, the plastic ones can be a little slick sometimes, so if they don't have enough time to glue that down, a little storm might be able to push it off the super off the queen excluder. The whole purpose behind the queen excluders is to keep a queen in one place. So most of the time you're trying to keep her in the brood box and not have her go up to your honey supers. The bars are theoretically built to keep the queen down in those spaces. I have seen the queens go between them before. Usually it's a very young or queen that is not as thick as some other ones, but I've never had my queen go through the queen excluders. Other things that you can use queen excluders for, and we'll talk about this more in disease management, is when you are trying to do a forced brood break to get her away from the brood just for a temporary time to do an OA treatment and you'll learn more about that later, probably in July in that class. And I was at a talk with Bob Binney a couple weeks ago, and I actually have never seen this before. He takes, for that forced brood break, another way he uses the queen excluders, instead of separating her up top, he'll take 2 of them and put them vertically between one frame to keep her just on that frame for those couple weeks that he's making that brood break. So some people hate queen excluders. They say that it reduces the amount of honey that you get and that the queen knows her boundary, saying, all right, this is as far up as I go. I stay here. I get plenty of honey. I know people that swear that they get just as much honey as when they didn't use the queen excluders. So that's just it's more of a preference thing. I would never not use them because I don't want to say, oh, am I gonna be looking through these extra boxes for my queen? So that's just my personal preference, is making sure I use that queen excluder. There's the bees on the queen excluder.